What's going on, M-Livers? It's Tony Garcia, sports reporter at the Jackson Citizen Patriot, and I'm coming with you. We finally found a name. It's going to be Tony's Take. So this is my take on what I think all the Jackson area teams should do in their local matchups for this week. Again, I only go over the local matchups, so we got 5 this week, 1 in the Big 8 and all 4 in the Cascades. We're going to start in the Big 8 with 0-2 Jonesville at 0-2 Concord. Both teams really need a win this week. Concord really banged up after a homer last week. And they really got to dig deep. It was their biggest loss in a few years. And with a win, they can get back to 500 in the conference. They'd be feeling good about that. Jonesville's been really close in its first 2 games against Hillsdale, then against Quincy, falling short in each of those, but showing that it's taking steps. And so the key for Jonesville is going to be keeping Caleb Hoover composed, the quarterback. He can be really good when he's on, but he can also unravel quickly. So keep him in short down and distances so he doesn't have to make too many decisions. And for Concord, it's really just seeing if they can get the bodies back on the field. They got really banged up last week, as we said, and if their offense can control the tempo, Cody Crode, maybe even little Austin Hoxie in the running game, then they can keep that defense that gave up 52 points last week off of the field. Now we're going to go over to the Cascades Conference, where 0-2 Vandercook Lake travels to 2-0 Addison. I've been saying all year long, even before the season started, watch out for Addison. They're not a lot of depth, but they have good players for the ones that are on their team. And Hunter Dart had a really big game last week, 20 rushes, 232 rushing yards, outgaining Manchester by himself. And so, I mean, that was really impressive. Addison averaging something like 50-some points a week early on. And Vandercook Lake hasn't been able to stop anybody. They gave up 40 points in a Week 1 loss to Springport, 40 points in a Week 2 loss to East Jackson. So I don't see any reason why Vandercook Lake would be able to slow Addison down. And so if I'm Addison, maybe try to expand the repertoire offensively a little bit. You should be able to get a win this week, but you're not going to get a win against Napoleon or Michigan Center, some of the better teams in the conference, by just run. So I'd see if Donovan Underwood can get his passing game going, see if Garrett Bernath, Caden Heckerman, a few of the targets he's found a couple times early, can really get anything sustained through the year. And for Vandercook Lake, it's really just keep growing. This is going to be a tough season. There's going to be a lot of learning under Tim Goff's new system, but as long as they see improvement like they did from Week 1 to Week 2, then I think Vandercook Lake is on track for the long term, which is what they know this is all about. Now, a really interesting matchup, Grass Lake at East Jackson. Last year, Grass Lake hosted this matchup, and it was a blowout, 53-0. M-Live, we were there last year, and I mean, it was running clock the entire second half. It really wasn't much of a game, and East Jackson, the players talked about that when they came in for media day this year, saying they knew they had lost the game before they got off the bus, and new coach Cody Farrell promised that would not be the philosophy this year. They're gonna believe they're gonna be in every game, and so far they've been in both games, going 1-1. Tough loss Week 1, but then bouncing back last week for a nice win against Vandercook Lake. And so this is going to be a shootout. Grass Lake gave up 45 last week. East Jackson has scored 42 and 40 in its first couple weeks. And I'm looking for another big game from Daniel Poole. Poole with 10 touchdowns in 2 weeks after moving to quarterback, making Farrell look pretty good there. But can East Jackson show any defense? So far, not really. Giving up 29 to a Vandercook Lake team that only got 7 the week before doesn't look too good. And then 48 in a Week 1 loss, like we mentioned. So we need to see something defensively. And for Grass Lake, there's now a quarterback controversy. Sean Hickey and John Lloyd split reps last week because Hickey's been having some turnover problems. If he can get that figured out, they said that he was the guy to follow in Jonathan Lutchka's steps. So Grass Lake has to get its quarterback situation figured out, but it really has to be able to run the ball, rush the ball for just a few yards a game last week at Napoleon, and that's not going to get it done. Michigan Center travels to Hanover Horton this week. 2 teams looking to put a couple of rough performances last week behind them. Hanover Horton, of course, shut out at Michigan Center, but did look good defensively. Only gave up 1 offensive touchdown to a Michigan Center team that scored 35 the week before. So good defensive performance, but really need to see a little more out of Frank Bird in the passing game offensively, and of course they're going to try to balance Ty Lapshin and Chandler Garcia-Vance in the running game, which they could not get going against Michigan Center last week. For Manchester, it's really just try to find anything. They averaged 1.5 yards per carry last week against Addison. That is not the recipe for success. Nobody had even 25 yards rushing. Not John Ziegler, but Ty Horkey was good passing the ball. right around 50% for 150 yards in the air, no touchdowns, no picks. He managed the game, but he needs something to back him up in the rushing game. And so I'm not sure how Michigan or how Manchester's going to be able to win that game if Hanover Horton plays its offense it did in week 1 against Concord paired with its defense that it showed week 2. And that brings us to the matchup of the week, Napoleon at Michigan Center. Man, this is a big one. Both these teams have had this game circled for a while. Napoleon, of course, beat Michigan Center 25-24 in the district opener last year on a 4th and 9 play with just about 30 seconds to go. And Michigan Center, this is its home opener after getting the facelift this offseason. There's new bleachers, press box, new uniforms, helmets, head to toe. The whole place is going to look different. So and big new Cardinal for all the players to run through before the game. So it's going to be quite the scene in Michigan Center this week. And it's really about on the field. It's about keeping Jake Nichols within himself. Some of those turnover woes presented themselves last week. 3 interceptions. That's too many to win against a good Napoleon team. And Michigan Center so far hasn't seemed like a big play team, but they can just sustain drives. They have plenty of playmakers in order to do that. So just sort of plug away and don't get carried away. Don't get too greedy on any one play. And Michigan Center should be able to have a good day offensively. For Napoleon, they also need to take care of the ball. But somehow you got to figure out how to move the ball consistently on this Cardinals defense. They've given up they've given up 1 touchdown all season in 8 quarters. Very good rush defense against Climax Scots and Hanover Horton, 2 teams that can run the ball. So I'd like to see how Darren Hampton can throw the ball. He found Ethan Weatherspoon on a couple big plays last week at Grass Lake. See if Napoleon can get anything going through the passing game. So Michigan Center has to respect that, thus opening up the running game. So a lot to look forward to in the Jackson area for this week. I'm Tony Garcia from the Jackson Citizen Patriot, and keep it locked on mlive.com for all your Jackson area high school sports coverage.